My name is Mehak Tijani, and I am a senior researcher in the education team at the RSA, and I'll be your host for this evening. And the reason we've gathered here today is to mark the publication of RSA's latest report. I have it here in copy with me. Citizens of Now. Looks really great, doesn't it? Yes, exactly. And this report tells the story of the work that we have done over 3 years across 9 schools in the West Midlands, exploring what high-quality youth social action looks like in a primary school setting, especially working with Year 4 pupils, thus the name RSA 4. And this project has been generously funded and supported by the Pairs I Will Fund, for whom we're eternally grateful. And joining us this evening to reflect on what we've learned in the project is a distinguished panel of speakers. So welcome all of you, and also a panelist who's joining us virtually. We have Richard Kieran, who's a head teacher at Woodrow First School, one of the 9 schools that took part in the RSA 4 project and who was there throughout the 3 years with us. We also have Amelia Patel, who's joining us virtually. Amelia is an I Will ambassador who started volunteering at a very young age and has recently received an MBE for her services to her community over lockdown. We have also Dr. Alison Boddy, Director of Philanthropic Studies at the University of Kent, and a specialist in children's rights, youth participation, and understanding how young people learn to give. And last but not least, we have with us Jacob Diggle. Jacob is Director of Strategy, Research and Impact at UK Youth, which is a pioneering charity that champions youth work across the UK. So before we pass it on to our panelists, a little bit about what to expect this evening. We'll have each of our speakers share some opening reflections about their work, as well as the reflections on the report itself. And then I'll have a chance to ask some of my questions. I guess because I'm the host, I get first dibs. So I'll ask some of my questions, but also have a chance for you to respond to one another in terms of what you've heard and what's coming up for you. And then we'll open it up to the floor here, but also to those of you who are joining us virtually. And for those who are watching online, I've been told that you can use the chat to put in your comments and questions, and also use the hashtag #CitizensOfNow to tweet, and we'll be picking this up along the event. Great. But before we pass it on, I thought I'd give a brief overview of RSA's work in education and how this particular project also sits in with some of the things that we have been discussing internally. Currently under development, our vision for RSA's education program and what we're calling the Fair Education Program is that education systems should provide all children with a rich education, one that supports both individuals and their communities to flourish. I think I have a couple of slides, so if I can get that up on the screen, that'd be great. Okay, should be coming up. Thanks. And when we talk about rich education, next slide please. What we mean by it is that we feel that a rich education is one that has a threefold purpose. Its purpose, firstly, is to develop a broad range of capabilities for its pupils. Secondly, it is one that enables pupils' agency. And what we mean by agency is that pupils, children and young people have the motivation and wherewithal to take ownership of their life and be purposeful in engaging with their communities and driving social change. And lastly, we feel that the purpose of schools is also to strengthen communities, to come together and really have a sense of belonging and a sense of shared cultural heritage. Next slide, please. And at this point, I would point to the slide and show you how these three things, there we go, fit perfectly into this Venn diagram. And what we're hoping to do as part of our work is to really find that sweet spot right in the middle where there is a balance of all these three different purposes of education. And what we feel actually is through RSA 4, through this project, we've been able to hit that sweet spot. Because through this project, pupils have developed a broad range of capabilities and skills. Things like teamwork, communication, problem solving, and also capabilities such as a sense of civic self-efficacy and solidarity, as well as signs of developing a habit of service. So really a broad range of capabilities that pupils have been able to take advantage of and grow and develop. Also, in striving to meet the high quality principles of a youth social action, we feel that pupils were really able to take ownership of their projects, not only in deciding the social issue that they wanted to focus on, but in also deciding and leading the activities that came under that social action. And also, speaking about community, we observed through the last 3 years that pupils and teachers alike had a growing sense of connection to their local communities through the activities that they undertook as part of this project. Some of those involved fundraising with and for local charities, building gardens where community members can come together, sending wellness postcards to elders in the community, raising awareness about social issues such as racism, amongst many others. So we really feel that through this project we've been able to get a sense of how these three different purposes of education can really manifest and come to life. And I think that actually brings us really nicely into what Richard, you might want to share with us about your experience in being part of this project and as well what this has meant for students and teachers at Woodrow. So over to you, Richard.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to have a chat with you all today. It's lovely to be here, and especially wonderful to be able to talk about our children from Woodrow First School, who are indeed a splendid bunch. They are matched only by their teachers and their support staff. Depending on who I'm talking to, I describe our school's setting as either the North Cotswolds or the People's Republic of South Redditch. The reality is that we are a first school slap bang in the middle of the Woodrow estate in Redditch. The go-to focus at the moment in schools is curriculum. Schools are expected to be able to tell their curriculum stories to our friends from Ofsted. Breadth, depth, knowledge, skills, sequence, coherence, and much, much more. But Woodrow accepts all of this, but you need to make it relevant to children. Their curiosity needs pushing. The curriculum should be explored. It must be open to inquiry, questions, and you construct it with the children. Relationships should always be at the heart of it, and they should like to learn new things. And this is how RSA worked with what we do. Given the chance, I think all of the children at our school would have loved to have been here today. They're all up there on the screen somewhere. So let's say they're here in spirit. And I think rather than Woodrow being here at the RSA, it was a real opportunity to have RSA at Woodrow in the RSA 4 programme. And because of how we work, we're flexible. We were in a position, I think, to make this project work. We were guided by good people who seemed bothered about our school and even more bothered about our children. RSA 4 wasn't shoehorned into half an hour on a Tuesday afternoon. It became a lived experience across the school. A new vocabulary entered our children's world, social action project. And the children were constantly reminded by us at school, that you are never too small to make a difference. The children owned their projects. They worked with their teachers. Their teachers were part of their team. And this is how we saw RSA 4 evolve. It worked because our children are used to working this way, making decisions, not seeking permission, working with adults and not for adults, and accepting wide-ranging authority and prepared to accept the stewardship such authority brings. Some might describe the class, the teacher, the children, the teaching assistants as a responsible team. The children were concerned about poverty within their community and beyond. Maybe poverty was a lived experience for many of them. And we should never be afraid to tackle issues children draw to the fore. And homelessness was something that concerned them. Maybe because they lived with it or they were directly affected by it. But was this that they wanted to explore and challenge? So if we were to approach something like this, it needs careful planning. What does home mean? Use text that children can access and draw drama from. We had visits from the leader of the local night stop. We visited the night stop. The overwhelming desire of the children was to make sure something happened. So the involvement of the school community was central to it, and then beyond. I've just selected some images that perhaps highlight key elements of RSA 4 and how it's left some level of longevity on the children. Here we go. I like this because it's the culmination of the children's work. It's their research, who was involved, what they did, and the outcomes too. And as word spread through the community about the project, others wanted to be involved. The children were given a £200 voucher by a local supermarket to shop for the night stop. One of our mums was talking about the time she was homeless. She talked about it with her son. She wrote a poem with him. The children turned this poem into a song in their music sessions, and they sang this. Again, what was great, other than the poignancy of the words, was the children's work was extending beyond the walls of the school into the community. And the community was actually responding. And then, so they brought their donations. The donations needed to be accessible, and they were visible throughout the school. The children were really reflective too about what they'd achieved. What I like about this, it says, when we go to our new schools, we could tell them what we did and encourage them to do a project. So let's just hear Maisie speak about the project. So this is a 9-year-old girl.
So, what did you know about homelessness before our project?
Like to let us live on the street so sleep on someone's sofa.
And do you know what do you know about homelessness now at the end of our project? What have you learned?
That people really don't like it and there's thousands of people that are homeless.
And what do Rachel like to stop trying to do about that?
They're trying to stop it and let people have homes.
And with our project that we've been doing, what are you really proud of?
I'm proud of finding the woman that we got so we can help the homeless people.
So spurred on by the previous year's work for the night stop, the other class wanted to raise money for the food bank. So they made pizzas with food bank ingredients. They drew in more donations. And as a throwaway line, I said, if they raised 100 kilograms of food, because I didn't know what 100 kilograms of food looked like, they could cover me in gunge. And I think we've just got a clip. And they loved it, they really did. our social action project rolled into others, and the children expected something that they could really get their teeth into. So we've got parallel year 4 classes. And the children wanted to challenge others to think about the effects of racism. This culminated in their own video, which we'll watch a short clip of. The children wrote the words, and we got a really talented music teacher called Rob, who produced the music. They were thrilled with the outcome. And what was really, really interesting was the children finished the video on the day that there was all this, the terrible problems around Euro 2020 and the racism following the penalties. Let's have a quick watch. Hannah asked to see this. To conclude, I thought this image from our Facebook feed encapsulates so much of what RSA 4 brought to our school. This was, is the last slide there from just, so this is Councillor Patty, which should be up there in a moment, who has, since we did this, she's passed away sadly, but she picked up on the images on our Facebook feed, and she fixed the transport for the donations to the night stop with the local taxi company. But what's wonderful about this image is the joy in the faces of Patty and the children. As much as I'd like to stage such an image for a PR coup, you can't. And to top it off, I think her comments about the children say everything about the long-term strength of RSA 4. So she said, what a lovely visit, and all parents of children taking part in this project should be very proud. Our town, our community, now our future is safe with these youngsters, and that's such a fabulous endorsement of this work. But I really think that the process still trumped the outcome. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for your reflections, and it was just great to see the images, the videos, and in your reflections how the pupils and teachers were connected to the local community, and it was really a sense of coming together in addressing the social issue in an empowered and authentic way. So that really came through in your reflections, and hopefully you can pick this up in the conversation later. But I'd love to now invite Amelia Patel. As I said, Amelia is joining us virtually, and I think she will be up on the screen very shortly, and she will be sharing with us her reflections of participating in social action from her early age. Amelia, welcome, and over to you. Just a moment, Amelia. If you can hear me, you're on mute to us. So give us a second for us to figure that out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. Even if it is virtual. My social action started when I was 6 years old. And this would have been very, very unconventional. But I was told to save the planet. And actually, by turning off lights, would make the world a difference. So at that age, I was very much in a far. I would go home and I would turn off every single light. The second my parents left the room. Or my dad's ultimate favourite was turning off the TV. And the second he got up to go with coffee, not realising that actually that was worse for the environment. But actually, for me, that's where this joy of being able to make an impact started. And although to most of you that seems so small, so tiny, so silly, but actually for me that's what ignited my passion. From then onwards during career, I wasn't always offered opportunities to go to school, but I'd often see something being done and would just be like, why can't you do it? And I think for me, that was being provided those initial skills and that learning and the evidence that actually made a difference, even though I was 6 or 7 years old. And actually, adults can make a difference, but I'm the one who's going to be looking at that. And for me, that just made an opportunity. So from then onwards in primary school, I went on to help in the Eco Club, as well as attending it. But this was only open to those in year 4 and year 5 upwards. And when I was in year 5, why can't we do something for those in reception in year 1? So me and friends set up our own club with school support, that basically help teach those younger locals to look after our wildlife. And some of that was as simple as, how do you make a bird feeder? How do you go about making sure that the wildlife around us is safe? But what that's done long term for me has just allowed me to be able to see the importance of being able to make a difference. And as I've grown up, I've been to be involved in loads and loads of different things, from volunteering in big charities to being able to fundraise for things that are important to me within my own community, but also been able to go abroad and participate in some international social action, such as like building houses in poorer areas in Africa, but also just this long-term determination in young people's voices heard, for me, is the most important thing. And I think it's been amazing hearing about already what some of these pupils have done. And I really just want to challenge everyone to not just look at social action as being a huge thing. It doesn't have to be raising thousands of pounds. It doesn't have to be changing the whole world. But actually sometimes if we just provide young people those small opportunities and that learning and getting them to actually pick what they're passionate about, will set them up for the rest of their lives. So whether that is simply saying what you see in your community, what upsets you, what annoys you, what you want to see happen differently, and supporting them, allowing them to be the ones who initiate the change. That's how you make the world a difference. And that's how we will make citizens of now. Because although now I'm over 18, I still very much don't feel a citizen. And actually, we're the ones who now are citizens. And actually, we need to let the next generation know that they are citizens of now. They don't just become a citizen when they're 18, 21, or whatever age. They are citizens of today. and they are the citizens of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, for sharing your reflections and a really strong reminder, like you said, that it's the small actions that can really make a difference, not only to the communities, but then to the individuals themselves, in recognizing that there is so much agency that they have in affecting the changes they would like to see. So that's a really good challenge for all of us as practitioners inside and outside of schools, and one that I hope that we can carry forward and really take charge of. I know that Amelia has to leave, but it was really great to hear from her, and I hope you two would agree that some really interesting reflections. We'll move on now to Ali, if I can call you that.
Absolutely.
Great. Ali, it'd be great to hear your reflections on the work that you're doing and also connecting to wider academic research on high quality social action, especially around that element of agency for children and young people, and how they can really take that on board in engaging with social action, and also the impact that has on their commitment to social action in their life.
Brilliant, thank you. And thank you so much for coming today and allowing me to be part of this panel. My research is primarily concerned with two things. How can we encourage, cultivate and support children to be kind, compassionate, critically engaged citizens when it comes to thinking about how we tackle social and environmental issues? And what is the role of education, civil society, family and communities in enabling this? I refer to this as broadly as philanthropic citizenship, which I define as a dimension of citizenship behaviour associated with intentions and actions that intend to produce social and or environmental benefits. So this is, for example, volunteering, social action, charitable giving, advocacy and activism. So why does this stuff matter? I feel like I could almost stop here and say, this is why it matters. Well, after we've listened to Richard's story, I think we can all see why this is such an important and enriching part of the curriculum. But let's be clear, this isn't the experience of every child or in every school. And whilst it's well discussed in youth studies, for example, to date there's been very little research which has focused on the philanthropic activities and engagement of younger children. Yet educational, social and psychology theory and research highlights that this middle childhood period is absolutely crucial in the development of our civic and our moral behaviours. The limited research that we do have into children's philanthropic citizenship, social action, charitable giving, etc., suggests that children are often willing and generous with their time, their talents and their treasures. And many studies, including my own work, highlight the ideas of generosity and giving as deeply rooted norms in younger children. However, children, more often than not, whilst being very naturally altruistic, unsurprisingly, if this altruism is encouraged, it increases their propensity to give and to engage in local issues. And research also shows us that parents, schools and communities often do go to great lengths to encourage and support and engage children of all ages in some form of philanthropic acts and social action. And this creates a really strong enthusiasm for supporting others, which I think we should all celebrate. However, as my own research and others does highlight, although this also often seems like a really kind of useful way of developing early philanthropic behaviours, when it comes to voluntary action, social action, charitable giving, children, in the main, don't have the experience that Richard has highlighted here. They are often, frequently, not engaged in decisions as in who they help, how they help, or why they're helping. Instead, more commonly, giving decisions are imposed on them by our adults, often as part of a large-scale national fundraising days or imposed community volunteering activities. These are the most frequent lived experiences of children's engagement in this activity. Children have little say in who they are helping and often very little understanding about why they're helping and why they're supporting the cause or what purpose it serves. For example, we encourage children to give to a food bank, but children are rarely engaged in an age-appropriate conversation about why food poverty exists or why they might be giving to the food bank. A classic example from my own research highlights a young boy who, part of Harvest Festival, thought God was hungry, and that was why they were giving. And we have countless examples like this from children's voices about that lack of connection between the act that they were doing and the why. By imposing these giving decisions on children without allowing them to critically engage in the cause that they are supporting, there is a risk that our response to social ills is encouraged as a one-off transactional process. Often, the giving is closely tied to what the person receives in a return. For example, how many of you sent your children into school on a dress-up day and they're giving £1? How much are they understanding about why they're giving that £1? So as well as shifting giving away from this also shifts giving away from its more traditional altruistic value-based roots, and this focus potentially reduces children's learning about charity and helping others to being simply maybe about fundraising rather than considering about wider social change that charities and our philanthropic action seeks to achieve. Research then also suggests that these external incentives are counterintuitive to promoting children's philanthropic citizenship, because not only are they teaching this as a response to social ill, but they're actually, we override those intrinsic altruistic behaviours with extrinsic rewards. So this has prompted a greater emphasis not just on teaching children to be charitable and help others, but more importantly has prompted a focus on how we engage children as active philanthropic citizens. And this is where I come to the Citizens of Now report. So the report that we're discussing today is a prime example of such work. For me, what really stands out about this project is the focus on process, as Richard was also highlighting. Rather than simply the outcome, here we see the lived realities of what child-led social action can achieve. Children are empowered to lead their own responses to social or environmental issues which they care about. This is underpinned with research and critical inquiry about the issue and a desire for change for the better. And importantly, children viewing themselves as active change agents within that process. And it's also connected to wider conversations and connected to their communities. From my perspective as a researcher passionate about this work, this is really important and really powerful, but I do believe that this is just the start of a conversation rather than the conclusion. As the report also highlights, there are multiple challenges to this work, including both practical and ethical considerations, which I think we need to think about further. We know that a range of socio-demographic and economic factors significantly impact on children's access to these opportunities, and that teachers have varying levels of time, skills, resources, and sometimes even confidence to facilitate these opportunities, all again which requires further thinking and further research. Furthermore, more work and understanding is needed on the potential long-term impacts of such projects for children, teachers, schools, and their communities. But on the good side, we also know that there are countless pockets of great projects out there, led by a range of voluntary sector organisations and individual schools, taking place across the country and beyond, which we can learn from. So I hope that this report today helps galvanise a commitment to the importance of child-led social action and a commitment to cultivating children's philanthropic citizenship through education. And if collaboratively, across our education, voluntary sector and research communities, we can see the possibilities, then I also believe that collaboratively we can come together to proactively tackle the issues.
I just want to pass it on to Jacob now. Feel free to respond, Jacob. That was going to be my question to you, is as someone who works with charities in the third sector, where does this fit into what has come up in the report and what you've heard from Richard and Ali? So over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a really exciting challenge, and I'm really glad that youth work is part of this conversation, because I think there's a lot of pressure that we put on schools for all sorts of reasons, and we've heard the transformative potential that schools have to really unlock this lifelong habit of service for young people, but it doesn't all have to be all of that pressure on schools. It's kind of what I want to reflect on a bit today. I think what we've heard through all of these contributions so far and in the report is that it's never too early to to help young people shape the future they want to live in, or as Richard put it, you're never too small to make a difference, which I really loved. And I think there's sometimes a concern when thinking about young children, primary school children, about, is that too early? But I think that there's always a reluctance to make decisions on behalf of the young person rather than letting them find their own way and unlock the joy of social action, which we've heard about already. And I think that what we heard from Richard's example in the school and is highlighted in the report is when we trust young people to have some choice and control in a supported environment, they can do things that really surprise us and which are much more fulfilling for them to engage in, and can approach some really sensitive issues with much more maturity than we might otherwise expect, or kind of place those limits on them. I think that we've heard so much about the potential of young children to make a real positive difference in their communities. And I think we heard around the report talking about creating meaningful connections with communities as one of the real lasting benefits of this work. And I think we should be reflecting on that in terms of how we create opportunities to support children to take part in social action, not just as an outcome afterwards. Because there are ways in which support can be provided by schools, absolutely, but also by family, by voluntary organisations, by youth work. And all of that pressure doesn't have to come on teachers and on schools. And actually through the collaboration of these different organisations, we can create more meaningful and seamless support for young people, which can be sustained beyond the life of any particular one project. We obviously want social action to be embedded in a school's ethos, not just, as Richard said, crammed into 30 minutes. I think there's, while that's a really valuable thing that we really want to embed within a school ethos, I guess encourage all the educators amongst us to think about the precedent that sets. If we're encouraging young people to think for themselves and advocate for the change they want to see in the world, that applies to the school administration and their school educational experience, not just on some predefined external social action activities. So it creates a precedent, which would be very welcome. But I think encouraging young people to think about how they can bring this way of being to their whole life and to all of their interactions with family and friends and community is really powerful for creating these kind, committed, critically engaged citizens that you were talking about, Ali. And I think here there are some fantastic examples through the I Will movement, in I Will Week, which is fantastic to be part of, thinking about how to unlock social action and the role that UK youth is playing in that, and in the role that youth work can play in that. And making sure that we're building connections between young people as well, and learning from one another and being inspired by one another, I think is really important. Which comes back to one of the key principles of I Will, of high quality social action, which is progression. So how do we, once we start young people forming this habit, finding the joy of making a difference, how do we create opportunities for them to continue to sustain these activities? And I think, again, here's a really important part of where connections between schools, local voluntary organisations and youth workers can be a kind of crucial triangle there in letting young people explore these opportunities in the safe space within the school environment, but also to build connections to voluntary organisations, youth workers, those outside, which they can continue outside of the classroom. And I think at that point we start nurturing a much bigger movement of young people and a habit of service that will hopefully continue. So it's been fantastic to be part of this event and to start this conversation. And I think that what this report shows really powerfully is the potential when we start opening up these opportunities with young people, but we've only just scratched the surface of it.
Thank you. great to see how all the different, all your reflections have kind of built off on each other. And Jacob, when you mentioned the two things that you mentioned that really hit home for me, one was the pressure that schools currently have, and then an additional pressure to then embed social action into their practice as being necessary and important, but also thinking about how it is done in a way that is meaningful. And that connects actually, Richard, to what you had said about the process requiring careful and deliberate planning. So I wonder if that's something we could unpick a little bit, is what does that careful planning look like? And what are some of the things that you need in place for educators who are probably really wanting to engage in this, but may not know where to begin, and may have never or have had minimal experience, for example, of really giving young people the leadership capacity to just make those decisions and lead those actions. So, Richard, in your experience, how did this work at Woodrow?
Well, at our school, the agency, we hear a lot about agency, don't we?
Yeah.
But it's central to our work. So the children do have a voice in how they learn and why they learn and what they learn. So if we were taking on board something like RSA 4, we weren't just going to do it for the sake of doing it. It was going to be something that was really valuable to the children. So if we want it to be really valuable for the children, because I've got an unwritten mantra at our school, is what more can we do for the children? What we've got to do, I think, as leaders within the school and teachers within the school, is to set it up so that it will work, and put the time in so that it will work, and make sure that the curriculum you build around a social action project is one that the children will want to invest in, and therefore their community can't help but invest in it too, because the children end up selling it to them. But I do think schools need support in how to do that. Otherwise, they'll end up choosing a social action project that fits in nicely with their curriculum that's already set out, and ultimately you're doing a disservice to the social action project itself, that childlike philanthropy that you want, if you're just doing it for the sake of whatever's in the curriculum. It needs to be completely focused, and then the children will buy into it. Intrinsic.
So there is a sense that amongst the adults there needs to be a change or a shift in how they engage with pupils, and in the work that is done in advance of creating that opportunity or presenting that opportunity for pupils to lead social action. And Ali, I wonder in your research if you've come across some of the things that teachers need to have in place to be able to do this kind of work, where you are really getting young people involved in decision making.
I think it probably comes down quite a lot to confidence. So we did a project exploring what children's views on homelessness were, and we looked over a number of schools exploring this. And actually, at the beginning, teachers were really hesitant for us to explore this topic. They were worried about how it would be constructed in the classroom, how we'd talk about it in the classroom, and whether or not children should even be exposed to these ideas. And it took a lot of convincing and support that this was going to be done in a child-led way, in an age-appropriate way. But once we got there, what we found with that was that the children already had a very good idea of what homelessness was. They'd either known someone who had experienced it, they'd either walked past someone every day who was homeless, and because they hadn't been given those spaces to critically explore that, they'd actually kind of drawn back to some quite stereotypical views of what they'd learnt off the TV. And so actually that became quite an empowering process for the educators as well in that process, because then they were seeing actually the power of being able to have a conversation and opening up those spaces for children to be able to ask those difficult questions, and also opening up to be able to say, I don't know the answer, but let's find someone who does. And so for me, a key part of this is about what Jake was drawing on in terms of the collaboration and collaborating with charities that are either delivering around these issues, but also collaborating with organisations like the RSA 4 programme or Young Citizens or First Give. But some of those really great organisations out there who will have lots of resources available that are helping teachers through these processes. But I also think we need to be rethinking some of the teacher training as well, and actually thinking about how much do we build this part, these ideas of citizenship, these ideas of social action, these ideas of children's rights and empowerment into teacher training education. And so I think that's probably another area that we need to be considering longer term.
Yeah, that's fair, because as part of the program, we conducted teacher tap survey questions, and within that we did find that regardless of years of experience, teachers, 2 and 3 teachers wanted and needed support in leading youth-led social action in their own settings. So there really is a willingness to engage with young people in social action.
Can I come back with one point on that actually I forgot to mention there, was in terms of also the importance of engaging parents in this as well, because another side of this that we saw was that actually teachers are worried about presenting some of these ideas and a child going home and then talking about things to parents, and so I think there's a real key part about bringing parents along in this process as well.
Great. And so Jacob, thinking about support that teachers need in terms of engaging young people, but as Ali just mentioned, parents as well, and I think broader community members, how can schools work collaboratively, proactively with organizations who are doing some amazing work with young people outside of the school settings, but really bringing those all together so that there is a coherent narrative from adults on how we can engage young people?
It's such an important point about the joined up nature of that experience and everyone playing to their strengths. You know, teachers are experts in creating safe, enriching educational environments for young people. You've got voluntary organisations in your community who are experts in making real change, but not necessarily in doing that alongside children and young people. And then you've got organisations, youth workers who are used to standing alongside young people and helping them to feel safe, but also motivated and empowered to make change, but not necessarily always linked to a particular social action or a particular way in which they could make change in their community. And so drawing on those mix of strengths I think is so important. But also in not ensuring there's just a seamless experience for a particular project, but also that there are routes for young people when they've got the bug, when they've experienced the joy of making change, they can carry on sustaining that and linking into whether that's their scout troop or with their youth worker at the local youth club, but they've got another avenue to carry on doing this and to build that habit. I think in terms of how to most practically to do that, I do think this takes planning. This isn't something that we can think, okay, in 2 weeks' time we're going to suddenly have this quite complex logistical feat, not just enriching educational experience. And I think it does take time for the trust and relationships to be built at a kind of adult and organisational level, first and foremost, so that the aims of it are really well understood and that it can be seamlessly planned into these different organisations' kind of opportunities.
Yeah, that's very well put, and something that I think worth exploring further as well. I'm conscious of time, and I'd love to now engage members of the audience. So we've got a hand raised here. Great.
It's Maddie here from the Family Volunteering Club, and I just think this is amazing, and I'm really excited and energised to read this report and hear you all talking. And I wish this was around when I was a kid, but it's just wonderful, so well done. I had a question, you just actually started touching on it. I was going to ask Richard in particular about feedback you had from parents and the sort of impact it had on the wider school community, parents and carers, and the extension of the children who were involved with the project.
Great. Maybe if we can take one more question and then we can answer it together. There is any? If not, oh, is there one? Great.
There is. I wrote it on my phone because I get nervous, so give me a second. So it's a question about policy and about and you started touching on it, the way in which policy and government policy can start delivering these things on a wider scale. And to achieve that goal of kind of embedding this within the ethos of not just aid schools, not just schools in the region, not just schools in higher income areas, but actually schools across the country. And we know that the government in England at least rather favour big grand volunteering schemes, National Citizen Service. In COVID we saw the Good Son app. So how can we build it from the ground up essentially? How can we build a national comprehensive policy from the ground up, utilising, as has already been said, the existing school capital, youth service capital, voluntary sector capital, but in a way that doesn't rely on local relationships, but rather on a more comprehensive policy? I appreciate it's a big question.
Okay, great, thank you. So why don't we answer the first question, Richard, that was directed to you?
Our parents were brilliant. They are brilliant. They're really supportive. We're in one of the most disadvantaged catchments in the West Midlands, and what was amazing and sad and brilliant and awful is that the donations that some of the parents were giving, they would end up getting back as food parcels from the food bank. So, but because their children are so involved in it, because they've got a lot of time for the school, and because we worked on the social media really carefully with it as well, our parents were hugely involved and hugely supportive. And they would spread it further too. So I think if you work well with your parents and you work closely with your parents and they know that the children are really getting something from it and it's not something being done to the children, they'll buy into it. I'm certainly from my experience. They've been fabulous, our parents, but they always are. They're good people.
Great. Thanks, Richard. And then moving on to the big question around policy. I wonder if, Jacob, you'd like to start us off.
I don't think there's one answer, but I think we need to think about how all the different levers of government can be pulled to get towards this noble aim. I think, first off, when we're thinking about what makes a good school, I think recognising the importance of that ethos of social action within a school culture, and that being part of a regulatory regime and something that Ofsted is something as concerned about, and I think it's there's some good signs there, encouraging. I have to say that ensuring that there are youth work organisations that schools can collaborate with, and there's a sustainable funding base there. We still haven't seen the Youth Investment Fund, 500 million that was promised. So having some youth work organisations on a sustainable financial footing, so that there's actually people to collaborate with, I think would go a long way. And I also feel like there's opportunities to think outside of our kind of organisational silos. So not just thinking about how schools and, say, youth organisations can partner and collaborate, but also how can we think beyond those silos, think about embedding youth workers in schools so they're working day in, day out, rather than something which is a kind of one-off partnership. I think would go a long way.
Great. Ali, anything to add there?
I think you've made some really great points. So I'm going to probably comment more on the pedagogical approaches that are pushed forwards with policy. And I think there have been some advances, and I think we are kind of thinking about ideas of character education in schools. My argument would be that we need to go beyond character education, and that actually we need to be looking more to making more space in the curriculum around global citizenship education and drawing more on those ideas of understanding our roles in society as both local and kind of global citizens. And I think if we can make those spaces in the curriculum, then we've got further possibilities to talk about it. And as I say, Ofsted are now focusing obviously on the character side of things, but I do think there is opportunities to develop that further and take that further.
I would say don't let Ofsted get their hands on any of it. It was an outstanding social action project. It was an inadequate social action project. It was that requires improvement.
So I see we have a few more hands raised, and we have time maybe for just one question. So Dave Juliet. No, go somewhere else. I've seen the hand at the back. So if I can take that. And while we're waiting for that, there is a question for Richard, actually. Given that this project was specifically for Year 4 pupils, a viewer on YouTube is asking what that impact was for other pupils as they watched the Year 4 pupils engage in social action.
And we made sure the other children were involved too, whether it be a tuck shop for the other children to come along and be involved in, or we had a street dance day where we raised funds, and that was across the school. The children would see that's mentioned where the Year 4 were collecting the foods on the slide. So it was very, very visible. So if it was visible, the other children would bit by bit be involved in it. So it was trying to involve them as much as possible, and like I said, social action became vocabulary throughout the school.
Great.
I think that was important.
Great. We have 1 minute, and I wonder if it can be a very quick question, hopefully to be picked up later on.
Okay, my name is Hugh. I run Adventure Learning for primary schools, and I'm just thinking, you mentioned about not wanting to be connected too much to the curriculum. Is that right? Did I understand that correctly? It's just, in my world, it's about what adventure can you do that will support the curriculum, and I'm thinking, what we're doing, what you guys are doing here, could that be an adventure? Could it be something that, as well as doing for altruistic reasons, that idea of connecting to the kids' interests, etc., and linking to the curriculum?
Yes, absolutely. I think we've all agreed and expressed in different ways that it is really important for social action project and work not to be an add-on, but really to be embedded in the school ethos, in its culture, and in the curriculum. And in a way that as young people are leading and deciding on the social issues that they want to be addressing and speaking about, then educators and schools are empowered to take those issues that are selected by pupils and then adapt it into the curriculum. So not just having a curriculum with a set list of social issues that are presented to young children to pick from, but really opening it up to them to then say, what are things that you're seeing that are coming up for you that you would like to engage in, and then designing a curriculum based on those interests. So there is a real opportunity there to really think about how we can create a student-led curriculum in a way. I'm afraid we are running out of time, but before we close this evening, we do have Dame Julia with us in person, but we also have a video of you, which we'll share now.
Well, as the co-founder of the I Will campaign, I can't tell you how thrilled I am in this I Will week of 2021 to see the immense contribution that the RSA, with, as ever, the support of the Pears Foundation, have made to this compelling case for investing in young people in the primary area. We've always sort of believed in the I Will campaign that although much was going on in secondary and much, of course, in universities and colleges, actually, perhaps the key was to start much earlier. And it was James Arthur and the Jubilee Centre that produced the Habits of Service report for us, which showed how important it was to begin much, much earlier. And this campaign and the work that you have done with these fantastic primary schools across the West Midlands, I think lends real courage, boldness and hope that many more schools and many more communities, particularly those in the more deprived areas where we hope the levelling up is going to take place, that actually it's young people there who are the citizens of now, such a good phrase, who will help to make the difference, whether that's the tackling of climate change or whether that's engagement in litter picking, as you can see the young squirrels doing in the Scouts at the moment, or whether it's all the myriad numbers of things that young people at quite young ages care about. So more power to your elbow, the RSA. As usual, you've absolutely identified the issues, and now we just need to spread it and make the best practice which is going on in these great primary schools widespread. Thank you so very much from the I Will campaign for all you've done to produce such compelling and impressive research, and for the hard work of all the teachers, head teachers, parents, community activists, but most critically, the young people themselves. Thank you so much.
What a wonderful note, I think, to end this evening on. Dame Julia, I hope that was...
Just lovely to be here. And all of us who actually listened to this and heard Richard's great story, you know, needs to feel encouragement. The answer to your point about how to really help get policy change is you just got to turn the I Will campaign, which did 7 years showing water like a bill, into a movement where all primary schools, particularly in poor places, say, we're going to do this. You know, this is what it's about. And never worry what the government call the bloody thing. I have no worries as to whether they call it character. David Blunkett called it something else. They mean the same things. You just, three great lines in the world. You can be a floater, you haven't got a clue where you're going. You can be a snorkeler, you just get down on one bit of the rock. Or you can be a surfer. And in my book, the world is changed by surfers, not snorkelers. So you take what it is they're calling it at the moment, character education, they're calling it something else before, community empowerment or something or other. Just take whatever they're saying and make what Richard has done become the exemplar. And that, in my experience, having written to Diana Barron last night saying, here we go again, Diana Barron, you have now arrived out of the Department for Communities, no, whatever you are, DCMS, into the DFE. Perhaps now you will take what you learned out of the I Will campaign into the education service, and we can have another shot on why is this not built in and embedded as the most democratic way in which you get to all young people through education. I believe in the point about youth work, and I'm thrilled that you and NDD are having a great go on the subject, but actually we've got to get the schools with their partners to do this, and that's what the RSA is giving us, I think, today. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So let's all be surfers and get young people to truly be citizens of now. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. To everyone here in the great room, to those who are watching us online, we have drinks in the Benjamin Franklin room, and we'll guide you to more conversations. And for those who are watching us online, I've been told that if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, to click on the bell right now, meaning it's going to pop up in the chat, to receive notifications of upcoming RSA live streams and replays. And make sure also to join our mailing list for all our latest events, news, and updates. Thank you again to our partners at the Pears Foundation for your support and guidance throughout this process. And as we've said, this is just the start of the conversations, many more to come. Thank you, and thank you for your engagement.